Hello everyone, with the AMD video card reveal on November 3rd, I want to do a quick summary of everything that's been happening ever since I did my recording. My recording was more focused on processors, but I did mention some early information on AMD Navi 31, which is the 7900 XT supposedly. So I'm going to kind of continue on that. To help you understand that, though, I do have to also talk about NVIDIA. Let me do that first. The issue that we're seeing right now with the RTX 4090 is to do with its power adapter. So it's not the video card itself, it's the power adapter that's connected to the video card and the power supply. It's a 12-volt high-power adapter, essentially. What was discovered by Igor's lab, and you can even see the video right here, is that if you bend this 12-volt high-power adapter at 35-degree angle left or right, it will cause the copper wiring that's connected to the plastic and metal to snap off, essentially. From there, it will just overheat or melt itself, one or the other. And that's essentially what is happening right now with this 12-volt high-powered adapter. It's important to bring up because in a Twitter post by one of AMD's staff, they did mention they are not using the 12-volt high-power adapter. That's very important to know. So, with that said, let me just tab over. The next thing that you need to know is that the Navi 31, the 7900 XT supposedly, is using the same chiplet technology now as the processors from AMD, which are called Ryzens. The Ryzens have been using the chiplet design for a number of years now, but it was only up until this point that AMD finally figured out how to do it for the video cards, because I guess maybe on an engineering level it's more complicated to do with a video card than the processor. I don't know, but either way, it's happening now with the video card. So the chiplet design is going to be very interesting to see, not just from a performance aspect, but from a recycling aspect. There's a video I failed to pull up by DeBauer. But what DeBauer discovered is that on some of the newest generation AMD Ryzen, so the 7000 series processors, some of them had the 8-core parts, essentially, on the 6-core parts. And he was theorizing, or at least somebody in his comments was theorizing, I forget which of the two it is, that maybe the 6-core processors are using the 8-core processor parts that didn't pass tests. So like they failed the test, or they just simply failed altogether. And because of that, they were just like, okay, we'll accept that this part has failed. We're okay with losing 2 cores and going down to 6 and just using this instead of just sending it to the bin and having it recycled. In a way, the chiplet design is really, really good for that aspect, because now instead of sending a defunctional part to recycling, well, partially defunctional, we should be more grammatically correct here, they're saying let's just use this in a 6-core part. It still functions. Why destroy something that works, you know? Chiplet design is very good for that reason. Now, the next couple of things that we need to talk about is power consumption and performance. Jay's 2 cents video here does a really great job of summarizing the history of AMD video cards, but given that this is a, 14-minute video? Yeah, over 14 minutes. I can go ahead and summarize it for you. He was saying that if you look back towards the RDNA 1 days, all the way up to RDNA 3, the claim of 2 times more rasterization performance is believable because of the fact that it's been happening since RDNA 1. They've always managed 2 times or greater rasterization from generation to generation. So the 7900 XT will more than likely do 2 times or more. And it will be doing it with a pretty low power consumption. 350 watts, which is going to be 100 less than the RTX 4090. So as Jay was saying, if this is enough rasterization performance to match the 4090, then that's a huge win for AMD because it's matching the performance at a lower power watt consumption. You're saving 100 watts for that, so that's awesome to see. We'll, of course, see everything on November 3rd, but I just want to quickly summarize all of that for you is what I'm essentially doing here with this video. Well, recording. Seeing as it's not a very long recording, I just want to quickly go ahead and share some additional thoughts on AMD Ryzen's, seeing as it kind of ties into the whole video card discussion. AMD makes what is known as the APU, which is essentially a processor with an abnormally large integrated graphics. But this year we didn't see them, at least on the desktop side, because for whatever reason, I guess they decided to do in 2023. And even then, it's still uncertain if they're going to stick to that because of the new AMD Ryzen's having integrated graphics. So, regardless of which APU it is, they've always used whatever generation of video card came before. So RDNA 1, RDNA 2, RDNA 3, and so on and so on. That's how the APUs are going to work. So it does kind of tie into this whole discussion because whatever happens here with the reveals on the 3rd is going to give us some window or idea of what we're going to see with the desktop APUs. That's a big deal because potentially within the next year or two, we're going to be seeing the adoption of AV1 encoding. If the AMD APUs are just as capable as the upcoming chiplet design video cards, then it's entirely possible that they can pull an NVENC with their processors, meaning that they can use the graphics side of the processor to do AV1 encoding, kind of like what NVIDIA does right now with NVENC. So it's going to be a pretty big deal depending on what happens with this reveal and, of course, the subsequent reveal with the APUs. While on that topic, I do want to just quickly share some additional thoughts on the processor side of things that I don't think I mentioned with that last recording. What AMD does with not just the video cards but the processors is a pretty big deal too, because as it stands, the current generation of AMD processors uses less wattage and it's easier to cool than the current 13th gen Intel. They're relatively similar performance in that they're both going to be over 100 FPS. Now, if you're in esports or something and you absolutely have to squeak out every ounce of FPS, then sure, Intel. But for most people, like I've said in the past recording, if you can achieve over 100 FPS, you're good. 120 FPS really should be the target for most people. I mean, I guess to give you some extra room for usage later on with the newer games as they come out. But generally speaking, you can't perceive anything higher than 60 FPS. You can read articles on that because I'm not qualified to talk about that. But either way, the reason that's all important is because it's achieving the desired performance and it's much friendlier to people who are just building computers for the first time or potentially for brand names. Because one of the things that you will get with brand names is you never know if the builder that they have on that particular day is competent. If they're not competent, the AMD Ryzen's mean that they can make more mistakes and still pull ahead of the 13th gen because of the fact that it's very friendly towards that. So I just wanted to really quickly say that additional thought because it's going to matter not just for the video cards, but also the APUs next year. Because if the video cards function the same as the current Ryzen's, then that means that they're going to be just as friendly. But that's all I have. Thanks for listening.